Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Maqbool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we will be taking a look at two important stories. One is with reference to what is going on in the neighborhood, particularly in India. We have seen that the Congress party leader Rahul Gandhi has spoken in Washington, speaking about the BJP-led government and the kind of impact it has had on India, talking about a number of variables that have damaged the society and have affected the country quite deeply, particularly also relations with China, in which he talks about how effectively China has occupied India's territory, and this is something that has happened under the watch of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and the BJP denies this and has also done nothing about it. Of course, we have been talking about the issues regarding clashes between China and India across the border, and back in 2020 a number of soldiers on both sides had also lost their lives, and then quite recently within this year as well, we know that about 11 different places in the eastern part have also been claimed by China as their own, which of course India denies. But again, in terms of what is going on and how effective this is, it's something that still remains to be seen. And according to Mr. Rahul Gandhi, this is something that the BJP government has failed at. There is also, of course, the issue of religious polarization, which has affected the country, which Mr. Gandhi talks about how there's a lot of hatred, a lot of violence, and this is being spewed by the state and the BJP, and this is something that has caused extreme levels of polarization within the country, is something again that the BJP denies, and said that its policies are aimed at the welfare of all and that it is not accurate to blame them for any sort of religious discrepancies or any sort of radicalization within the society. There is also concern with reference to the issues of the strengthening of institutions, particularly the freedom of press, which again has been marked by Mr. Gandhi that under the BJP's watch, the index regarding the press freedom within India has also gone to an all-time low, and because of that it is important also to reflect upon the policies of the BJP, how they have not accepted any sort of dissenting voice and have effectively tried to curb any voice that has criticized their policies or measures. And this is important also in terms of the upcoming scheduled visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to the US and how that's going to impact that particular visit, and also how the entire world is going to be taking a look at not just China-India relations, but also, of course, US-India relations and what is going on within the politics of India as well. So we're going to take a deeper look at what is going on and what this means for the BJP and, of course, for Congress leader Mr. Rahul Gandhi as well. In our second segment, we're going to be taking a look at what is going on back home with reference to, of course, the political developments. We have seen that since May 9th, there have been a number of party leaders that have left Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, and they have spoken about how this is something that is not in line with their principles, something that they do not support, and that at this point they're going to part ways with the current PTI chairman or either leave politics altogether, with some also talking about how they're going to leave party positions. These include quite recently the very valued former Punjab Chief Minister, Mr. Usman Buzadr, and then also the Chief Minister of KP, former Chief Minister Pervaiz Khatak as well, who has not left the party technically, but has resigned from his party position. And this is important also, of course, in terms of now what is left of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf and what sort of an impact are these continuous blows going to have on the party, and whether or not the kind of rumors that we keep on hearing about, particularly from the measures and activities of former PTI leader Fawad Chaudhry and also that of Mr. Jahangir Tareen in terms of forming a separate faction or a new party, that whether or not this is going to lead to something which is then going to effectively put an end to whatever future that PTI may hold, which includes the current PTI chairman. And then, of course, we're also going to be taking a look back at what has been going on with reference to the current PTI chairman and the number of cases that have been going on against him. And, of course, that includes a lot of cases that involve corruption as well, and how under his tenure there have been a lot of major corruption issues that have emerged, including, of course, the Al Qadir Trust, which has been the most recent, in which the current PTI chairman has had to face face the law. And then, of course, there are others, including the Toshakhana reference and, of course, the Peshawar bus metro as well. So we're going to be taking a look at all of these issues and what this means for the political developments in the country. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Farrukh Pitafi. And for our first segment regarding what is going on in India, we've been joined by Dr. Jamil Ahmed Khan, who's a former ambassador, and Dr. John Dayal, an Indian human rights activist. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being a part of the show today. Let me start with you, Dr. John. The considerations and the kind of news that been coming in from India, of course, a lot of them point towards the kind of societal chaos that we see, or the kind of issues that perhaps have been pointed out by the Congress leader, Mr. Rahul Gandhi. But in terms of what he has just recently said, first I want to take a look inwards with reference to what is going on within India, especially in terms of religious polarization and the issues of press freedom that he points towards. And then we'll move on to the foreign relationship as well. But when we look at what is going on within India, do you think that perhaps this is something that can be uniquely pointed and blamed towards the BJP, and that it somehow doesn't have perhaps more of a fundamental premise on which the Congress party can also be blamed?
First of all, let me begin by saying what a mess both our countries are at this moment in time, and how important, therefore, it is to take remedial steps. Coming to my country, I quite share Mr. Gandhi's understanding of what is happening. As a newsman, as a member of the Minorities Committee, and as a member of civil society, I too am very deeply worried. Even as I speak to you, I mean, we are of course grappling with a triple train accident in Orissa, but further north, northeast, in the state of Manipur, we have possibly one of the biggest acts of targeted violence we have seen against religious minorities in decades. And it's a very fraught situation there, because it's not just anti-Christian, it's people versus tribals who also happen to be Christians. You know, we fear that much of it is well planned. People have been trained, government machinery has acted and not acted, leaving a vacuum where non-state actors can do their havoc. Many years ago, 2 decades ago almost, I had an occasion to be talking to Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, who was the then Prime Minister of India, and undoubtedly the tallest leader that the BJP has ever produced, and which means he was much taller than Mr. Narendra Modi. And he was trying to sort of pacify me, saying, you know, these are incidents that happen. It's a fringe that is acting. Most of us in the BJP are peaceful people. This could be 1%. And I told him that 1% is a very nice small figure, but 1% of 1 billion is 1 crore, it's 10 million. And that's all too many lunatics to be roaming around and doing havoc. And this is what we see at the moment across the country. Mr. Modi seems to be in a perpetual election mode. And his election mode is to polarize people, not only to abuse the Congress and other opposition parties, but to identify who he thinks are the enemies of the state. And that would include people like us, religious minorities, liberal people, educated people, professors, and so on and so forth. So that situation not only tries to intimidate us, but encourages these 10 million rowdies who in various states are doing what they want to do. This, of course, also has an immediate and adverse impact on our economy. It puts the stress on all sorts of situations. It makes people suspicious of their neighbors. And ultimately, apart from what we call the Godi media or the Modi media, crony media owned by a few people, which says there's nothing wrong with Mr. Modi, the rest of us feel the brunt of the action against the press. As a journalist, I can tell you, it's no fun being a reporter in Delhi. I mean, You can't really have a press conference without people shouting at you from the audience, and nobody will then cover your press conference. So I'm not surprised that in the International Press Freedom Index, we are absolutely nearly at the bottom, as we are in other social indices. So this is in this situation, our foreign relations become queasy. Mr. Modi is going to the US. He will certainly, as he's always done, have a tame group of people shouting Modi, Modi, Modi in Houston and a few other places where they've been brought, as they were in Australia.
Yeah.
But the problem then comes when he's talking with the government of the United States. Various commissions of the United States, including the Department of State, including the US IRF, the International Religious Freedom, they have indicted India on multiple counts. But when it comes to the state of the US in its relationship with India, they look at a larger picture. They look at the voluminous trade. They look at the very well-trained human resource that India can provide and the very large arms market that India is. They also look at how India is party now to them in the Quad and in various other international military and political groups out to encircle China. So in the totality then, the US, the European Union, and everybody else becomes, how should I say, to use a current term, very popular in international politics, the US too becomes important. It just, even if it wants to act, it just cannot act. And that does not in any way encourage civil society in India. So we find ourselves alone. But as Mr. Gandhi has been explaining, and as we feel, the elections in Karnataka, the fact that the cartoonists are having a great day on social media, the fact that Mr. Gandhi himself can go to the US, have a press conference. A press conference is something Mr. Modi has practically never done in his lifetime in politics. Implies that maybe, as I've said on your channel many times, maybe we are seeing just the beginning of a turnaround.
All right, absolutely, and that is the hope, of course. Dr. Jamil, the concerns that, of course, have been outlined by Dr. John Dayal point towards what larger interest countries have when they're dealing with each other. And I can, of course, understand in those terms how less things within India have impacted the relationship that it enjoys with other countries, particularly the US as well. But when we talk about what Mr. Rahul Gandhi has spoken and what Dr. John Dayal also pointed out perhaps has some value in terms of the fact that there was a press conference that was held and also in Washington. Do you think that this can possibly eventually lead towards some sort of direction which causes some ripples or causes some change to actually happen in the way that at the state level also India is viewed? Because currently it seems that irrespective of whatever's going on within the country, the relationship will retain itself.
Well, it doesn't seem that it would cause any dent on the BJP doctrine and BJP strategy, what they have today. But yes, it's a move in the right direction, this kind of a press conference. And the Congress, they've been always spearheading the cause of secularism, and they've been always standing against this polarization. But over a period of time, there have been certain things which I would like to really enumerate here. A very comprehensive and lucid account has already been given by Dr. John Dayal. But my observation and some of the points which I'd like to touch upon is basically ever since Modi and BJP have started gaining their strength in the political arena of, in India as a center player. The secular country, India, it has just started moving towards the Hindu nationalism and Hindu Rashtra. Secular pluralist Congress party obviously have been always standing against this polarization. But somehow BJP in the last two elections, they've been able to gain further ground Electoral victory definitely has increased the tension, and it has further augmented the polarization and the marginalization of the minorities and the intolerance in India, unfortunately. Added with the competitive cost politics and that also has brought further steadily the polarization. Opposition parties just have become extremely guarded. Even there's so much of suppressed, there's so much of pressurized that they are quite guarded even in defending pluralism and secularism because of so much of pressure of non-state actors and because of their own humiliation. BJP, ever since they've come in power, they've further amplified intolerance, particularly against the majority of the Muslim minority, I would say. And this toxic environment today, it has increased in last one decade so much that probably the Congress would find it very hard to really neutralize it and bring Indian society back to that place where intolerance and pluralism was the main pride of the Indian nation. Now, 2014 until now has brought the kind of polarization which has attained a dangerous level today. And previously, until 70s, the dominance of the Congress party had moderated the polarization and had been averting that kind of a situation, what we see here. Although it started and there was a dent once Gandhi ji was assassinated by an associate of RSS in 1948. But then later on, from 14 onward, 2014 onward, the entire scenario has completely changed. And more importantly, 2019 general election onward, in which BJP had again won the outright majority, that had given so much of encouragement of those groups who have become terror in certain fiber of the society in India, and it's negatively affecting Indian so much that the national politics and social life, social fiber is getting disturbed, and increasing intolerance and violence is being witnessed all over India. It is so toxic that the political discourse in which the leaders frequently demonize their opponents and minority groups has fueled a disturbing rise in intolerance and violence. And what is happening because of it? You see that lynching of people around, you see that mob attacking minorities, particularly the Muslim society and even the Christians and some other. So this is giving birth to that kind of an environment where India might as well have an implosion from within, and obviously they cannot maintain their image, which the good old time, once the secularism was the main pride for the Indian society. I don't think that in the near future one can see that unless the parties like Congress or like-minded parties, they are able to gain some strength.
Right, absolutely. And that's an
Otherwise,
important point, because I want to understand the value that Congress or other parties will actually be able to bring on the table if we talk about change. And Farrukh, of course, I understand that it's a Congress party leader pointing out the flaws with BJP and what went wrong and how it's impacting the country. But have they done any better, or will they be able to do any better? Not just in terms of when they come into power, but also in terms of being in the opposition or being able to hold the government accountable. Do you think that parties opposing the BJP have the strength to do what Dr. Jamil was referring to?
Right, Sana, I think that we are actually getting ahead of ourselves when we talk about when they come. I think at this moment debate is still on whether it is if they ever come back to power. But let me begin by offering my heartfelt condolences to Dr. John Dayal. and our Indian friends on this tragic news that is coming from Odisha. I think human life is very precious, and no matter wherever it is damaged, that is something that we all should be condoling.
Absolutely.
Now, let us talk about India and India under Modi. First of all, let me begin by actually going back to India's constitution. I think that there are many constitutions that I have read in the world. One of the recent ones is India's, and it is a beautiful document. I think the framers of the constitution, especially the first version when it came out, and then of course this addition of word secularism somewhere in 1950s was a stroke of genius. Those people understood that South Asia is so stratified and so polarized that if you are going to allow communalism to play any serious part in the politics of the country, it is going to always undermine the country, right? This is a lesson that we started learning after 2002 when we started confronting the same elements. So when Dr. John Dayal was actually talking about the mess both the countries are in, I think that there is a subtle difference. In 1947, both India and Pakistan were confronted by extremist communal organizations. RSS in India, at that time Jamaat-e-Islami, but then it kept on changing shapes, and there was a religious faction in Pakistan as well. And we had blind policies that we pursued from 70s to 90s, end of 90s, right? And suddenly when we changed our policy, we started confronting them, and we realized what kind of mess there was. So the subtle difference between India and Pakistan is that India's side made be organizations like RSS who were violent and who were actually political back in 1947. They were not confronted the way they should have been, and finally they have taken over the country. At this moment, they have consolidated their rule in India, and because of that, they keep on playing, wreaking havoc with India's body politic. There are two things that are very interesting, Sana, and for that you have to mention a book called, let me actually see it, Being the Other by Said Naqvi. And it is important because here's a guy who actually wanted to, play dice or play, along with RSS for some time. He kept on actually cajoling them. And there were two competing values. One, secularism versus Akhand Bharat, right? And Akhand Bharat being the greater India, that all parts of India that once were part of India should be part of it again. So his argument was that in order to actually go for something like Akhand Bharat, first you have to be secular and you have to ensure that you are better than the others, right? Sadly, because that appeal fell on deaf ears and RSS kept on consolidating itself, now they have actually used another argument to counter this kind of philosophy, and that is Hindu consolidation. India's problem is not Muslims versus Hindus. It is actual issue is that the Hindus themselves are divided into so many castes that majority actually belongs to the underprivileged. They actually used Muslims and then Christians as the common enemy or as the boogeyman to actually consolidate the Hindu vote, right? In the name of love jihad, in the name of so many other things. But now what has happened is that economics actually beats everything else. And Narendra Modi's government's economic policies have been really flawed, and I have been saying this since they went for demonetization. And now the 2000 note for which actually demonetization took place, that has also been cancelled, right? So at this moment, the economy keeps on showing that it is growing, but the main vehicle or main indicator, that is the job creation, is not increasing. So the rich are getting selfish, the poor are demanding their rights, and what the majoritarian, authoritarian minority actually keeps on doing is keep on abolishing reservations or quotas for the poor classes. Because of that, there's going to be much bigger problem in coming days. I think Rahul Gandhi is a smart man, and finally they have understood that all of this has to be through a system. I think his Bharat Jodo Tehreek or movement was very successful. We saw in Karnataka it also played a very big role. And similarly, they have actually cracked the code of using data to go for elections.
Right.
If they have actually done it, I think they have the capacity to win. If they win, they will hold these people accountable to an extent, but regarding corruption, not religious extremism, because that issue has actually spread really wide, and it will take generations to get rid of it. Remember, we actually got rid of it in the war on terror. Then the previous guy, the former guy came, the former government, and they once again, we kind of relapsed into the same policies, and then it is taking us a lot of time now to get rid of that negative influence.
Right, absolutely. Dr. John Dayal, the concerns, of course, are many when it comes to what needs to be done for India. But I want to understand whether or not your hopes lie with the Congress party or any other party leadership to actually take that forward. I understand what you were saying about the possible ways that or avenues that can open up, such as the press conference having some sort of value eventually. But in terms of what we see in the future for India, do you think that change is perhaps going to come through political parties and leadership or from the people in general? And also add to that, of course, another aspect that is with reference to India's relationship with China, and we know that it has been sour for many decades now. But especially if we take a look at what has happened under Prime Minister Narendra Modi, do you think that this is something that is fundamentally worse than before, and that in fact what is being talked about by Mr. Gandhi regarding issues of territory is a serious concern for India at the moment?
Okay, let me begin, and I will answer every single one of those questions. Let me begin by saying that when I began and saying both the countries are in a mess, I was not trying to compare the messes. Each mess is a different mess. So we will leave it at that. And I think both His Excellency the Ambassador and your resident critic have been quite right. They have not said anything more than what we have been saying in our assessment of what Mr. Modi has done, where he has brought the economy, how job creation is negative at the moment, and so on and so forth. I want to go a step further, actually, and we've been saying so. By the way, the press conference, I was not praising the press conference for what it was. I was just comparing that here's a man who has dared hold a press conference where people can ask questions, which Mr. Modi has not done in the 20 years that he has been in public life. He has not had a press conference, and certainly not as Prime Minister in the last 9 years, which means he doesn't want to be questioned. And that brings me to the critical point. Mr. Modi, unfortunately, has changed the grammar of politics in India. He has brought about a qualitative change which has made the opposition to only react and not really do something to which Mr. Modi has to react. The act of desecularizing India. Mr. Modi has put so much weight on Hinduism as India that the opposition just cannot criticize it. Whether it is Ram or it's any of the other gods, nobody would dare. Essentially, the larger leadership is Hindu, and they would not like to alienate a single vote. So the polarization is slightly more complex than we think it is. No Congress or any other opposition government will attack the BJP face on face on religion. And we have seen that with the Ram Mandir, Babri Masjid issue. How to restore the sort of secularism that we want is where there's space for them to work. We have a chief minister of the Congress called Mr. Baghel. His love for the cow is more than any BJP chief minister's love for the cow. His love for the gods and Lord Rama is more than even the BJP. He's planned a yatra through his state, spotting every place associated with the Lord Rama, which even UP government has not been able to do in Uttar Pradesh. So the Congress has to play a little bit of a soft Hindutva. And that is true for almost every party. Leaving that aside, I think Mr. Modi is vulnerable on the economy because that is bread and butter. There's parents wondering where the children will go after high school. That is people not getting a job. People have to downgrade their life. The child who was studying in an English medium school has to come down. Those are serious things which are impacting, and those are things which are making people question Mr. Modi's arrogance. His claim that India is the world leader because it's so old, because it's so ancient, and he's plugging it in. And this is reflected in the new building of Parliament, for instance. It is crude on the outside and garish on the inside, very deeply Hindu-oriented. And that is not what something that parliaments should be. We were in a building which was a colonial building, but it was a neutral building. It had an Indian idiom, and India that we understand in India. Lots of Buddha, lots of Mughal, a lot of other Hindus. All those elements, all that grammar was there, which has been excised, removed, cut away in the new parliament. So for the opposition, and I use the term loosely, because the opposition in each state has a variable. The Congress and the CPM, the Marxists, are in conflict with each other in Kerala, and the BJP has no role, and so on and so forth. We go state by state. The Congress has a conflict situation with one party or the other, but collectively, there is enough space to maneuver so that groups which are stronger in a state manage to capitalize on their basic strength. So we are not talking of a coalition which crashes into the BJP as one solid mass. We are talking of a situation where the coalition is actually designed to be after the election. So that each group wins, and collectively, when it emerges that they have a majority, they come and make the stake. So it will be UPA 3. And UPA 3 is being designed, I think, as an observer, without necessarily the Congress claiming that they will lead it. And that leaves it for any leader who can carry everybody along with him to be the Prime Minister. The Congress will be the larger anchor, polar star, but the leadership could be with somebody else also. So it is in that situation that I see some hope. And in the frustration of the common man who says, God has his place, but I must get my food and from an honorable job.
Right, absolutely, and these are important and valid concerns. Dr. Jamil, with reference to, of course, the issues of foreign relations of India as well, we have seen that the issue of China and India's relationship is something, of course, that is a major concern. But despite what is going on within India and the way that the clashes have had a reemergence over the years, what do you think is really the connection possibly between the two, also in terms of how the BJP is able to run the country? And secondly, when we talk about the issues of territory as well, and the kind of claims that have been coming in from China, do you think that possibly the kind of accusations that are being put forward by Mr. Gandhi on BJP of not really realizing that or doing something to counter it are accurate in terms of your assessment of what is really going on between the two?
I think BJP is trying to capitalize on the geopolitical new dynamics in this region, and what all they are doing within the country in terms of polarization, in terms of radicalization, in terms of the violation of international law towards the religious freedom, and so on. Because of their significance in this entire region, the Modi government is able to get away from all. What Mr. Rahul Gandhi has, through his press conference, has tried to flag the point is that India, with this approach, and the BJP government with this approach, is going to further going to bring further poor performance in terms of economy, in terms of societal cohesion, which is required for such a large society and such a large population. So that is one. But so in terms of China and in terms of its neighbors, the Indian government, the Modi government, as I said, is entered into certain agreements with United States and its allies, and they've become a very strong member of a string of pearls in this region against the containment of China. As a very strong member of string of alliance, which is the alliance made by the US and its allies, and India being a very important member of the string of alliance against China. So if we have those points in our mind, we will find that India is trying to capitalize. India is trying to capitalize on its agreements and its geopolitical significance, which it has attained in terms of number one foreign policy of the United States, which is containment of China. And under that very garb, the Modi government has been able to get away from the reports like Human Rights Commission report, from the reports like the Religious Freedom Commission report of the United States, and all the other criticism, even the press, journalists without border, they have really issued a very huge report, and they've been Reporters Without Border. So they've been really pointing out as to how many journalists and have been arrested, and how many newspapers have been gagged, and what kind of censorship has been imposed, and also the way it's being controlled. So on one side, the BJP government, Modi government, is able to get away with the violation of these international laws and the covenant of international covenant. And on the other hand, the BJP government is trying to capitalize on this advantage what they have gained in terms of the geopolitical emerging situation. So all in all, it appears that BJP government is going to make this as a main focus of their next election, and they would try to again keep their power and keep trying to capitalize on their vote bank, which they have been able to form on the rhetoric against its neighbors, as well as against the pluralism and against the and in terms of the cost, and in terms of the Hindu nationalism politics. So from
Right.
that standpoint, it appears that they will continue with what they have in their mind,
Okay.
and that it doesn't seem that the other parties would be they have been suppressed so much that they would probably not be in a position to undo it in the coming few years. Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Jamil, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. Thank you very much, Dr. John Dayal, for also joining us and being a part of the debate. Farrukh, in terms of course, what is being used as part of the elections, is what Dr. Jamil was referring to. I understand that, of course, anti-Pakistan rhetoric is there, but in terms of anti-China as well, and the way that that is going to actually translate into whatever campaign is coming in from the BJP, do you think that still has a value for the BJP in terms of the kind of ideologies that they're putting forward, and especially in terms of the territorial claims that are there? And I understand that this, of course, perhaps a serious concern for any country, but the BJP, of course, is talking about such matters a lot, or this is coming in from India a lot as well. But in terms of the kind of claims that exist, is that an actual threat that can possibly have huge impacts for India, or something that is needed to be seriously countered? Because at the end of the day, at the moment, we just have both countries just not accepting each other's stances.
Right, Sana. China versus India is something that has become a cliche topic in Pakistan, but it is also something that is very interesting. Especially this talk about string of pearls and all. all the strategy that India keeps on actually using to burnish its credentials has, the curse of diminishing returns. I don't know whether you have listened to Ashley Tellis. Ashley Tellis is an American intellectual of Indian origin who was instrumental in actually working on the relationship between the two countries. At that time, of course, China was the main factor that they wanted to align about, right? But now he says that India under Modi and later also has its own interest and cannot be considered a reliable partner. Now, what that does to India's credentials is interesting. While right now they're using all their diplomatic and economic muscle to convince everybody else that they are very important to America's and West's Asia policy, but the truth lies somewhere else, right? The fact is that when China actually started investing in other countries, it called it BRI, Belt and Road Initiative. Compared to that, what was India's solution? India's solution was pumping up, Adani Corporation, right, and building it up so much so that it is investing in all over the world. And now, thanks to Hindenburg's report, we know that whatever remains of Adani at this moment before our eyes is merely a construct. It is propped up by Modi government, and the day they go, it will collapse. At least that is what seems to be the case. Now, the territorial issues are temporary issues. They can be dealt with. I know that Indian side keeps on pushing for trying to present itself as someone who has been gaining of late, but they haven't gained anything. They have been losing allies. For example, Dr. John Dayal was talking about Indian Parliament. There were two very important symbols there, Sana.
Okay.
One is at the top of the the building, and that is Ashoka's pillar. In Ashoka's reign, there was a pillar which actually had 4 lions, but who are sitting very calmly, right? With that kind of calm, one would have thought that India actually is exuding its calm confidence. But now what they have done here is replace that with 4 menacing tiger lions, right? So there seems to be a message that we are ready to attack everybody on 4 corners.
Right.
Then they have placed a mural inside the building, and that actually shows the map of Akhand Bharat. Again, Pakistan was second to object to it. The first one was Nepal, right? A country that was being forced to become India's satellite. So at this moment, they have actually, under Modi's government, they have offended almost everybody. Now Modi's farewell visit, the US visit actually comes at a time when America's own elections are taking place, so they need Indian community's vote bank as well, and they are going to actually lavish him with a lot of respect and whatnot. But the problem right now is regarding the diaspora itself. The first generation Indian diaspora might actually be Modi's fan, but the second, third generation Indian Americans or Westerns, they are tired of him because they have been banking on the fact that India is a secular democracy. So at this moment, I think what Rahul Gandhi is doing, he will be able to mobilize that kind of support, and eventually it is going to, next year, it is going to translate into something different.
All right, let's talk also a little bit about what is going on in Pakistan, and of course with reference to Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf and the number of party leaders that seem to be leaving the party. It's important, of course, to understand where this is heading and what's really happening with reference to the party and the current chairman as well. We understand that, of course, Usman Buzadr has also announced that he's going to that he's leaving the party, and then there's also Mr. Pervaiz Khatak, who has talked about leaving the party position, and these obviously are individuals individuals who have followed many others, senior and important individuals for the party. In terms of what we see, Farrukh, for the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf and its current chairman, how big of a blow do you think it is, particularly for these two individuals leaving the party? And then also in terms of what seems to be perhaps the biggest factor impacting the party at the moment, do you think it is the fact that so many people are now abandoning ship, or the fact that there have been a number of cases against Imran Khan that have been going on, many with regards to corruption scandals as well that have emerged to the tenure of the previous leadership, and then whether or not the way that the military installations of May 9th were attacked have caused the kind of rift that we see, perhaps that the PTI chairman kept on referring to in the past as well, and something that we see has now impacted the current situation as well.
Right. Regarding this exodus of party leaders, first of all, you began by mentioning Buzadr Saab. I don't think that with the Buzadra's departure there is going to be any serious dent to the party. He was never actually a part of PTI. He was borrowed from a very low rank position in PMLQ, and from there he was made chief minister. I think that it might be a blow to the former first lady, but it is not going to be a blow to PTI.
Not even to the PTI chairman?
No, not at all. The other one is important. The other one, Pervaiz Khatak, remember the day when I said that the day he leaves the party, I'm going to say that PTI is practically finished.
Yeah.
I think that unlike Buzadr Saab, he is very well respected. I have had, these huge chats with a lot of bureaucrats who have actually worked under him, and the guy knows his job, right? That is not all. There's one thing that people don't realize. We keep on focusing on politics in Punjab because we are obsessed about the most populous province. Most of our anchors, pundits come from the very same province. But actual place where PTI actually had managed to dig its heel in was Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and there it was primarily because of two gents. One, Pervaiz Khatak, the other one, Asad Kaisar. Asad Kaisar, the former Speaker of National Assembly, and former Defense Minister Pervaiz Khatak, who was also former Chief Minister, they had done a lot of work to make the party popular in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. And now, while they haven't formally quit, we know that Fawad Chaudhry team has been in contact with everybody, all of these individuals. Now, Asad, the former finance minister, I'm forgetting his last name, but that gentleman also, both haven't left their party positions but have not left party. But the news is that they are going to leave the party as well very soon. So with that, PTI is almost done away with. It was a Tonga party at start. It has become a Tonga party in the end. And then the chairman that you were talking about, and the former first lady, by the way, who also is very influential in party. We know about the spiritual impact and all that aspects. So they are going to face a lot of legal issues. And I think that eventually they will go into exile if they are not going to face the military courts or similar kind of situation.
Can you also just also quickly clarify whether there is going to be a huge difference with the announcements of not leaving the party but just leaving the party position?
Yeah, what exactly does it symbolize? That we are refusing to take a responsibility for the party, right? What is the next step? That means we are free to exercise our decisions, right? Our choices. And why is that happening? Because many of these people were nominated by the former guy, by the chairman PTI, as members of the negotiation committee. I don't know with whom they were supposed to actually negotiate. They might need to actually now negotiate with PTI because they have changed sides, and eventually they will be gone. So right now we still have to see where they land, but I can tell you for a fact that regardless of recent incidents, Pervaiz Khatak is going to be a huge addition to whichever party he joins.
All right. Thank you very much, Farrukh, for, of course, sharing your views, as always, in the debate. And a lot, of course, still remains to be seen. But effectively, we have been witnessing the chaos of Pakistan Tehreek itself, and, of course, the way the party seems to be disintegrating. And, of course, in the way that this is going to impact the political future of the country is going to be something that we'll also be looking closely at. And we'll be talking more in our shows as well with whatever goes on in Pakistan and the world over. That's all that we have from the debate today. Have a nice weekend. We'll see you Monday.